Today we're looking at 5 common questions about angels. Let's go. So the first of our questions is, where did angels come from? It's a good question. We should probably start there. So angels are part of God's creation. They are not eternal beings. They don't go eternally past. They will exist eternally forward, just like human beings with our eternal souls that will live on forever somewhere. But angels do have a created point in existence. So Colossians 1 tells us, when it's talking about Jesus and the most beautiful preeminence of Christ passage in Colossians 1, it says that He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by Him all things were created, in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things were created through Him and for Him. So that clearly includes angels, whether it's because they are part of the thrones and dominions and rulers and authorities, or whether that's because they are the ones in heaven that were created, or whether that's because they are the ones that are invisible that were created. On all accounts, angels were created by, through, and for Jesus Christ. Let's go on to the second question here. What are angels doing today? Well, Hebrews 1:14 tells us that angels are doing a work that is precious in the sight of God and is something that we ought to be really, really thankful for. It says, regarding angels, it says, "Are they not all ministering spirits sent out to serve for the sake of those who will inherit salvation?" So, every single angel is involved in some way in drawing the people who will be saved to salvation and then serving them in their salvation to help prepare them for eternal glory and the glorification of the soul when sin will be no more. So in a general sense, that's what angels are doing today. But that kind of leads us into the third question, which might be the one that most people are thinking of. It's probably the most common question about angels, and that is the question of, do we all have guardian angels? So this is an interesting one because Scripture doesn't give us a whole lot of information. It doesn't tell us, it doesn't ever try to answer the question, do we all have guardian angels? But that doesn't mean that it gives us nothing to go off of. And we kind of have to step back and ask ourselves, what is a guardian angel? Like when we talk about that, what do we even mean by that? So a guardian angel is usually thought of as an angel that is sort of assigned to a human for their protection, for their guidance, and all those kinds of things, right? So this is not a new idea. Some people might credit Hollywood or Hallmark or somebody for this kind of question, but this is not a new question. In fact, going back to the year 150 AD, there's a document which we think it's from approximately 150 AD, and the document is known as the Shepherd of Hermas. So this is super old, and the Shepherd of Hermas teaches that each person has not one, but 2 angels assigned to him, one good and one bad. So no, it wasn't Disney or Warner Brothers who put an angel on one side and a demon on the other. This idea has been around for a very long time. Now, going on from there, the early church father Origen also believed in some sort of idea of a guardian angel, and he said every human soul is put in subjection to some angel. Now, we don't know necessarily exactly what Origen's conception of a guardian angel might have been, but clearly these are thoughts that were being processed thousands of years ago. So, for most people, the primary source text when they want to say, well, of course we have guardian angels, here's a Bible verse that says it as clearly as any. Well, if that is available, if there is such a thing, Matthew 18:10 would be what we're looking for, which states, "See that you do not despise one of these little ones, for I tell you that in heaven their angels always see the face of my Father who is in heaven." So this is Jesus talking about children, and he's saying their angels, potentially meaning that Jesus is giving validation to this idea that every person from childhood has an angel assigned to them. There is another possibility, though, and one theologian named John Gilhooly said, as readers, we ought to think carefully about what is clear rather than running to speculation. In that light, it seems better to understand the reference Jesus makes in terms of the overall purpose of his teaching, which is that disciples matter greatly to the Father. The angelic reference is meant to accomplish this rhetorical purpose. Now that's possible. Gilhooly could be correct that Matthew 18 is an overstating that Jesus is using rhetorical language in order to show just how important his children are to himself. Or it could be a reference to guardian angels themselves. And some people would argue this, that maybe the strongest, most persuasive evidence for guardian angels is the very experience of them. So I can remember when I was a kid, and we lived in this condominium, and my mom was bringing groceries home, and she had just two giant arms full of groceries, bringing them up this steep stairwell that led up to our home. And she took a bad step pretty high up on the stairwell. And these are like concrete steps, just as dangerous as it could be. And she starts to fall backwards on this stairwell, and she felt someone put their hand on her back and push her back up to where she was back on her feet. And her heart's pounding and everything. She turns around to thank the stranger who just helped her, and there's nobody there. Stories like this, they are everywhere. And so the sheer volume of stories like this may be the strongest evidence for some idea of a guardian angel. Daniel says that when he was in the lion's den, it was an angel who shut the mouths of the lions. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, when they were chucked into a fire because they wouldn't bow down to Nebuchadnezzar's statue, while they were in the fire, they were accompanied by one who was called the angel of the Lord. And so there are instances where angels are absolutely intervening into the affairs of mankind in Scripture, and countless examples from everyday life. And so are there guardian angels? Maybe. Maybe not. But definitely there are angels serving a purpose to help mankind in more ways than we could probably ever know. The only question that's really left in debate is whether or not you have one specific angel who is assigned to you all the time, and so the angel Bob just follows you around everywhere you go, and he's your protector or whatever. What we know from Scripture is that we are never, ever encouraged to try to talk to angels, to try to seek their help, to try to pray to them, or any of these notions. We are encouraged in Scripture to find our hope and our peace in God alone. Through Him, we obtain our hope and salvation. And so, if ever there was some idea that, we have a guardian angel, therefore we pursue that guardian angel instead of pursuing Jesus Christ, instead of pursuing our Creator, that would be a mistake. Well, let's go on to the fourth question. How much influence do angels have in our daily lives? Well, it's a good question. In an ultimate sense, they have no control, because they are merely messengers of God. But in another sense, they have as much control as God gives them. And so they're bound, even though they make real choices. Angels and demons both, they make very real choices just like human beings. But those choices are bound within the limits of God's sovereign will. And so they can accomplish nothing that goes outside of God's sovereign will. And this should be so comforting to our souls. There's a lot of things that we want to know about angels, that we want to know, but what we really need to know is that we have nothing to fear when it comes to demons, and that we have nothing to gain when it comes to obsessing over angels, because God is our all in all. He is the King of Kings, the Prince of Peace, the Lord of Lords. He's everything. And so angels, of course, they have influence in our lives. They have the influence that God has assigned to them, and no more and no less. Well, the final question, number 5, do humans become angels when we die? Or we could ask, were we angels before we were born? So it kind of goes both directions. Are we angels? After we die, do we graduate to angel status? Or before we were born, did we live in angel status? And the answer is no. These ideas are simply absent from Scripture. There's nothing I could show you in Scripture that would imply either one. We do not have any trajectory where we are headed toward becoming angels. We also know that when we were created by God, each individual person, unique in our person and makeup, we were created at the moment of conception. Body, mind, and soul, like the whole thing was created at the moment of conception, not in some ancient time. So there's no reincarnation, there's no angels becoming humans or humans becoming angels. We are distinct from them. Let me ask you, do you think that we missed anything? Are there any questions about angels that should have been included in this whole list? If so, leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We have another video coming out real soon, 5 common questions about demons. And so if you want to be aware of when that video comes live, hit subscribe, hit the bell, and leave a comment below. God bless.